It is so great to be with you, Brian and Joanna, again.
Yes,
Um,
thank you.
this really is a joy for us,
Mhm.
just to be here again. We love FFI. We
Yeah,
love what you're doing. We're honored to be here,
yeah.
and it's a joy for us.
Yeah, and so we actually exciting times right now for us. We had a our fourth grandchild was born actually 2 weeks ago. And then our daughter, Katie, who's our oldest, who works for us, just like Sarah works for Brian and Joanna, which is funny, but she is due any day now. So with that, it's going to be our fifth grandchild. Yeah. So this is a very exciting time for us, having children at home and children who are married and having grandchildren, as well as us doing this family ministry. It is a great joy for us to be here. Yeah.
So we're just to kind of start off a little bit here tonight. But I spent about 10 years working in politics, and when I was in politics, someone shared this really kind of powerful quote with me from Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and Saint Ignatius said that the devil will use what is far off to distract us from that which is near. Meaning that sometimes we get so caught up in the political, the economic, all these other issues that are out there in the world, in society, and we lose focus on the things that we can actually have an impact and control over. Particularly when we look at our family. So that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the family, the entity that you can have the greatest impact on and the greatest influence on. So whether you're a parent, a grandparent, whether your kids are still in the home or not, if you want to, transform and renew the world, it all begins with the family. It all comes back to the family. Again, I think we know this, but our world has changed in the last 50 plus
If
years.
you've been living under a rock, you already haven't realized that.
But like our countries, right? You are the institutions, if you will, of our countries used to support us in our work. The values the kids were being taught in home was often echoed in school, and they were often supported, whether it be in the public square or the media. Today, the culture is still communicating values, is still sending forth and teaching our kids, but those values are really antithetical to what it means to be Catholic. And there's the hookup culture, there's the materialism, there's transgenderism, all these other issues that are out there today that really are making it more challenging than ever to raise our families in this world, right? Those effective supports that used to be there to come alongside us really aren't there, and we have to recognize that this is a real and present danger to us. Just looking again, kind of at the big picture of the family and society and the world. Sometimes as families, we can feel like we're just this little dot on the map, but these attacks have really affected us as a family, and there's social science research that talks about the importance of of the idea that the family broke down and before the faith declined, right? So Mary Eberstadt is a social science researcher who wrote the book How the West Really Lost God. And she looks at the Western countries and sees that there was actually a breakdown of the family first before there was actually a decline in faith. And so by recognizing this, she calls it the double helix of society, that faith and family are this kind of necessary and supports for each other. And that in our history, the family has broken down and faith was lost. But she also believes that when faith or when the family is renewed, it will also help and renew the faith. And so we really need to take this idea and recognize that our family, our small little efforts in our home actually has massive influence on the world around us, and that we can't get caught up on, not that we don't need great people in politics working in all these other efforts out there in the world, but the most powerful entity is the family. So many people lament where the family is now and kind of look at the problem of the family. But the family isn't the problem. The family is actually the solution, right? The family is the solution. And if we recognize that the family is the building block of all of society, then renewing that family is the surest way to renew the church as well as transform the world. Mother Teresa would say that if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And this is what we're
Maybe
talking
chat with Adam about pinning our video. So don't lose heart, right? Because as we're talking about the breakdown of the family and the loss of faith, we have to recognize that God always gives the church what she needs when she needs it. The church is in crisis today, but like my mom would say in talking about these issues, she would say, the church is always in crisis, right? That always happens. And so, but God is always taking care of the church. So let's just think for a minute of how is the Holy Spirit speaking to the church in her current crisis, right? How has he been preparing us? Well, let's look at how is the Holy Spirit speaking to the church? First of all, Vatican II, right? Vatican II proclaimed the universal call to holiness. It confirmed and affirmed the role of the laity in the life of the church. And then we have John Paul II, who came and magnified it even more with his beautiful theology of the body that said to married couples, your marital love, having children, this isn't just a good thing to do. This isn't just a great thing to do, but this is sacred. This is a sacred act within the home. And he taught us how to become saints in our own home, right? So in past crises, God has chosen to renew the church through great saints, through religious orders, right? When monastic life was in crisis, he gave us Benedict. When the church was too worldly, he gave us the Franciscans and the Dominicans, right? And then when we were in error, he gave us the Saint Ignatius and the Jesuits. And these men all started religious orders that God chose to renew the church. So putting this all together, right? Who is he using today? Who is God using today? So I want to paint this little picture for you. So a young Catholic mom, she has a bunch of kids. She's trying to keep it all together. She and her husband adore each other, but they have conflict because she likes to shop. She likes to go and buy her clothes, which of course I can relate to, right? She works full time. She gets a nanny to watch her kids. Her kids hate having a nanny. She has a child who's expelled from school. And like a lot of women, she struggles with all of these anxieties and worries throughout her life. But she faithfully brings them to Our Lady and to our Lord in prayer. Now you may ask yourself, how can that woman change the world? And this woman actually considered becoming a religious. Would she have done more for the church in becoming a religious? Would a leader or a priest do more for the church than she would? Well, you know who I just described to you? That is Saint Zélie Martin, the wife of Saint Louis Martin and the mother of Saint Therese, a doctor of the church. So no, she wouldn't have had more impact on the church as being a religious. She had the most impact by being a mom, by being a wife, right? We have to change the way of envisioning what holiness and renewal looks like. What if we had more mothers like that? What if we had more fathers? What if we had a generation of families who lived the church's teaching faithfully, not like a religious, but like a family? So John Paul tells us in Familiaris Consortio, each family finds within itself a summons that cannot be ignored, that specifies both its dignity and responsibility. Family, become what you are. That's how we are going to bring our church to holiness. Not necessarily by going outside of our home to, start great movements and works and all of that, but by being a better mother, a better father, a better son, a better brother, a better sister, a better aunt, uncle, grandparent. So many problems in our society are so deep and personal, they can only be healed within the family. I may be wrong, but I don't think that revival in our church is going to come through a new religious order. I really don't. I believe it is going to come through families. So if we look at the family today, and we're painting this picture of the environment that the family is growing in, I think of it this way. The family's like a seed, right? It has the makeup, it has the potential, the design for the perfect, proper growth of the human person. This is the best way to form a human person. But the problem is that the environment that our families are growing in right now, like the environment in which that seed is growing, is toxic. So how can we remind families of who they are? How can we kind of like pour fertilizer in the ground around that seed to really help families to grow and become what they are meant to be, even within this unhealthy environment of our culture?
And we believe that answer is families understanding their why. And I'll explain this. Sometimes Catholics, sometimes we in the world, we try to complicate things. We
Right.
theologize, or we spend a lot of time in these big ideas, and make our lives just too complicated. But the family isn't an overly complicated structure. It's not easy, but it's not overly complicated.
Simple but hard.
Simple but hard, right? So the church says that the parent's ministry, the parent's role, is original and irreplaceable. This is John Paul II from Familiaris Consortio. He says the parent's role is original and irreplaceable, meaning no one can take your place in the life of your child. No one can take your place in your marriage. It is original, meaning this is before everything else, right? This predates any business or even any parish for that matter. It's so basic to what we are. And it says, John Paul II says, it has the characteristics typical of family life, which should be interwoven with love, simplicity, practicality, and just daily witness, right? So the idea that we are taking on something, it's part of who we are. It's in our very DNA. God designed this, and we need to, in some ways, get out of the way and recognize that this is God's plan. This is God's path for the growth of the human race, but also for the salvation and renewal of the world. Now, God gives us the grace to be a husband and wife, to be a mom and a dad. And again, a Catholic marriage, or a marriage in the true Christian sense, is one man, covenantally bound to one woman who generously welcomed children from the Lord. But beyond that, we have to get rid of the notion that there's only one way to be a family. You don't have to be our way or the Stimson's way, or there is something very powerful and beautiful about the fact that we have things in common, but we're also called very uniquely. We're called very specially, which takes a burden off of us, because we don't like being called experts, because we don't know how you should step into your particular role. We have some big principles and a mission that we want to share, but how you do it is really up to you and the Lord, and how that's worked out. Because we have couples who come to us all the time looking for advice. We have thousands of couples that we kind of engage with on a monthly basis, and they're asking us questions like, how do we discipline our kids, or what will keep our kids Catholic, or how do we talk about money, or the most important, what do we do to get our kids to sleep through the night? They ask these questions, and the questions are, they're asking what and how. And those are important questions, and we try to address their concerns and their issues and help them overcome that. But from our wisdom, from our experience, what we've seen from others, but really ultimately what we want to do is draw them back to not just what and how, but to their deeper why. Right? The reason that's going to drive us to some true principles that are unique to them, as well as universal to all families. And that's what we think that's what we want to spend our time tonight, is really kind of unpacking the why. Simon Sinek, kind of a secular speaker out there, said it always begins with why. Good businesses, organizations, they go back to this kind of internal motivation. This motivation, how do we move forward? We need clarity on why we're doing this before we know what and how we're doing it. But most people spend most of their day on what and how. Think about this as a military analogy. It is vital that a battle plan is needed when you're going in from a military engagement standpoint. But if you lack clarity on the mission, it is all lost. There's an old saying, something like, a battle plan. No battle plan survives the first contact with an enemy. Meaning, once the first bullet is fired, but if they didn't have clarity on what the mission was, if they're not moving their forces, if they're not engaging in the proper way and knowing what are we trying to accomplish here, right? So you have to have the objective, the destination, what is driving you forward. That is your why. That is the why that we as a family need to understand. The why is that internal compass, right? That directs our lives, that gives us reasons to make the decisions that we make in our life that are going to be different than others. The how and the what, again, are very important, but we need to live out of integrity and intentionality, connecting our actions back to the why. So your family can't just be making random choices and changing directions and shooting from the hip. I feel like that's what we did a lot as young couple. You know, as a young couple, is that we were always putting out fires, right? We were always going from one urgent issue to another, and never taking a moment to pause and say, why are we doing all of this? What is the deeper reason at work? Because we need to allow our intent, in order to be intentional, which is the theme of tonight, intentional family life.
It's a drinking game. Every time we say intentional, you can just like take a drink, right?
That's right. That's a good point. All right. So as a church, I think one of the solutions, one of the things that we believe the church needs to become very effective at is really teaching people a pathway to understanding their why and empowering them to live it out, because it is ours to own. It isn't someone else's job. You know, as John Paul II said, your role in the ministry as a parent is original and irreplaceable. No one else can do this but you. You are so essential for your child, for your marriage. You know, so in discovering your why, you'll know what to do when things change. Your why will help you make so many decisions that may be very monumental right now. They'll make them actually much simpler and straightforward. One of the reasons it's vital to understand this is because, again, as we said earlier, your why is so important because everyone's a little bit different. And people and situations change. Your family changes. And knowing your why, you'll be able to operate more effectively and manage those situations more effectively.
So you may be sitting there and be like, okay, I still don't understand what the why is. Well, we're going to break it down for you because we love being practical and we love teaching people this. Okay, so like Mike said, your why, that's your internal compass, right? It is made up of three things: your mission, your vision, and your values. And if you have the handout, we kind of go through this little talk summary on the one side so you can kind of follow along as we go through this. So first of all, let's talk about the mission. The mission of the Catholic family has been given to us by the church. And so the mission is the same for all of us. Okay, so now the why is made up of three things. The first thing is mission, which is the same for every Catholic family. And that is the family has the mission to guard, reveal, and communicate love. And the reason that we do that, right, is because this is a living reflection of and a real sharing in God's love for humanity and the love of Christ the Lord for the church, his bride. You know, so that's all you have to do in your family, just image God's love for humanity, right?
No big deal.
It's no big deal. No, but really that is what we are called to do. And so think about it. This is throughout our marriage, our parenting, our discipline, our physical intimacy even. In all of these ways, we are to guard love, reveal love, and communicate love. And that makes the family an icon on this earth of the triune God. You know, it's wow. And that needs to be in the front of our mind in the decisions that we make for our family. That has to be part of what is in our heart and how we live in the world. So now the other two parts are going to be different for everyone. So we have a universal mission, but you have a unique set of values and a particular vision. And we love talking about this because things get really fun. So every family is irreplaceable. If you think about it, every person, right? There has never been another person like me in the history of the world, and there will never be again. This is what we understand. God is infinitely creative. How much more so for your family? If you think about that, there has never been a family like yours in the history of the world, and there will never be a family again. Isn't that beautiful? And so you have to really think about, how did God create us? What does make us different? Because when you understand what is unique about your family, what are the values that your family has, that helps you determine everything else. So this helps you figure out things like where you live, where you send your kids to school, how you vacation, how you spend your free time or money, how you celebrate holidays, even how you pray. And so we found that when you articulate this unique vision and values, it brings great unity to couples and clarity when they have to make tough choices. And it also enables you to look at other families without judgment, because you can say, these are our values. This is the way we pray as a family. This is how we spend time together. That's what that family does. And that's okay, because this is what we value. This is who we are. And so this is what the family needs to help define that internal compass and then connect that to their actions.
And so just talking about these values, or these core values for your family, we're not able to walk through everything. So if you want to go deeper in this, we're happy to go more, but we'll give you a little bit of more flesh on this, because again, trying to make this thoughtful for you as a process. Your family's values are part, again, that you're going to recognize that makes you different from other families. We have to really ask that question. What about us as a family is different than all the other friends that we know, right? And try to narrow that down to 2 or 3 core values, right? What are those values? What makes you unique from the families that you go to church with, or that are in the same school, as
or that you're at this watch party with?
That's right. And it's like, and they can't necessarily be values that we all share in common. Meaning, I remember when we first talked about this, people were like, well, we try to be respectful and kind in our family. Well, yeah, every family is like that.
Every family should do that. So that doesn't count.
Or their values are, this is not a core value, is an aspirational value. A value that's like, hey, we want to be like,
more civically involved,
right?
say.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
But if it's not today, then that's not currently a value of yours. Not to say you can't aspire and grow and develop new habits and ways of acting. And it's important that we don't compare to others, because again, that whole idea that we're uniquely made, and we're made by God this way, right? So the idea is that you're discovering your values. Not that you are always living with intentionality based on those values, but that they're already there. And so it's spending some time saying, what do we really care about? What's really important for us? And one way to discover this value is to consider how the two of you were attracted to each other when you first met, and in the early years of your marriage. We actually, maybe it was about maybe a year ago, one of our kids found this list that I guess I had written when I was in college, or in
it was when we were dating
or something. Okay.
It was a letter you wrote to me.
Okay, and I had it was a kind of a bucket list before I knew there was such a thing as a bucket list. I said, these are all the things that I aspire for, right?
This is us getting to know each other.
And so I was talking about Ireland and wanting to visit there, where my grandparents and heritage comes from, living on a big place of land and kind of farm and garden, and designing my own house. Or I really cared about a big family. I also cared about travel, and I cared about hospitality. Mm-hmm. And all these things, many of these things we were able to either accomplish or do, which I thought was pretty cool. But what was great is thinking about it and saying, wait, that's actually one of the things that Alicia and I were drawn together on. We really, we both wanted a larger family. We had this idea that travel and kind of the adventurous experiences of things, that was something that we both shared in common, but also this idea of hospitality, which actually leads to another funny way to figure out a value is to think about it. It's like, what have you gotten in trouble with? Something that you really value that has actually gotten you into trouble before, or maybe you've taken a little bit too far. We mentioned hospitality is a value of ours. Well, there was more than one occasion, but there was at least one occasion where we love having people over, hosting them in our home. And we invited so many people that we actually ran out of room for people to stay at our house. And so it was extended family. They didn't mind, the kind of creative.
There's always room. You always another,
We turned a room that was a study into a bedroom, and all the kids were, and it got us in trouble. And it was exhausting. And at the end of the day, we looked and says, we love this. This was so important to us.
But maybe we'll do this differently next time.
That's right. Maybe we'll think about this. We'll think twice about that next time. But also another way to think about your values, the core values, is to things that might actually bother you about other people. We placed a higher value in traveling to visit extended family members. And it actually bothered us that there wasn't always a reciprocation from some families, that we would travel out, we would make the sacrifice, but they didn't always come out to say it. That doesn't mean they didn't love us. That didn't mean that they didn't care about us, but they didn't place as high a value on the travel part of making that kind of a sacrifice.
And it was just so hard for us to understand, but we had to
And we
realize.
kept judging them. They're just bad people.
But not really, because we always felt loved by them. But then we had to realize that's because we value travel and they don't.
Right.
You see?
And so anyway, so the idea of coming up with these values is such that you can then have an easier time deciding, yeah, that's not what we're going to do, or that's not part of our worldview as a family, right? And that doesn't mean, again, you have a mission that is unchanging. So you don't want to love, sorry, you got to love. If you don't want to grow in holiness, well, that's part of the mission of a Catholic family. We have all these ways that we're supposed to serve and be called into all of that. That's part of what it means to be a family. Mm-hmm. But what's unique about us is getting to that place where we understand our unique values. And so we actually, although there's one last thing, if we have time there? No, we don't. I'll skip it and we'll catch it later if we can.
So we have mission, and then we have values, and then we have vision, right? So after you discover your values, you need to cast a vision for what you want your family to look like. How do you want to look 10 years from now or 20 years from now, right? What virtues or habit or lifestyle do you want for your kids when they're in their 20s or 30s? So the vision is really kind of putting flesh on your values. Like, how are you going to live this out? And that vision really reflects the values, right? So mission, vision, values, they all kind of flow one from another. And recognize that these desires that you have for your family and for yourself are from God. So if you say, you know what, I want to be a millionaire. That's my vision for our family. I recognize that could be from God.
It could be.
That could, right. It could be that maybe that's something. And as you discern that with your spouse, because it's not just one person's family, it's your family, right? Or we want to be debt free, or we want to own a lake house someday, or we want our children to really be missionaries and have a missionary heart and live the faith. And that really takes a living beyond today. Right? And some people admittedly are better at this than others. So to be able to dream big. Some people do that really well. Like Mike does that really, really well, right? I'm more like the practical. Okay, what's right now? What's today?
Which is the beauty of actually being married, right? I mean,
right.
We need people who can plant a flag. Right. We need people who can actually help us get to that flag,
right.
Right. And I think too many people, you overestimate what you can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate what you can accomplish in 10.
Right.
But in order to live a more intentional life and knowing your why, think about where your family, where your marriage, where your kids are going to be in 10 and 20 years from now.
Right.
That changes the conversation,
right.
And it really puts you into a place where you're saying, okay, what does God want?
Yeah.
Where does God have us in the future?
Yeah, exactly. Because then you'll know why you're making the sacrifices today, and you'll be inspired to live a certain way, whether it's financial decisions or whether it's decisions in prayer or whether it's decisions of where you choose to live or send your kids to school. All of those decisions should be connected to that why of who you want your family to be, those unique vision and values, and it will help you to embrace that uniqueness.
And the reason it's so important for a family, for all of us to embrace that mission, the mission that God has given us, is that the family has what the world is looking for. The whole world is looking for what the Catholic family has, both in the formation of our children and the formation of adults that happen through our marriage and our parenting. This is the idea here that our life as a married couple, we don't have a seminary, as a married couple. We have kids. Kids change us, they form us, they shape us, and it's by thinking forward, by living intentionally, by aspiring to what God has called us to. That's how we are shaped. That's how we are changed. And that makes it profoundly different. And by doing that, we have this irreplaceable role that the whole society has that powerful impact. I had this powerful and profound experience of God's love holding my child, my firstborn child. And I have also never been more angry in my entire life than dealing with one of my teenagers, right? But both of these experiences are calling me and challenging me to become who God meant me to be. This is my path to holiness. This is your path to holiness. This is how we become saints. It's by making ourselves a gift in our marriage and to our children, that we embrace the sacred calling for parents.
So really, what we really want to say is the best response to the crisis in the church is the renewal of the family. So as we said at the beginning of this talk, so our society is becoming more toxic and families are suffering, but there is hope. Sister Lucia from Fatima said that a time will come when the decisive battle between the kingdom of Christ and Satan will be over marriage and family. And that's the decisive battle over marriage and family. And we can see that. And we need to know the day of casual Catholicism is over. Who would have thought the new rebel cry is, get married and have kids, right? But this is what we need. This is what our church needs. We families need to take our place because there is no greater need in the church and the world. And God has provided us a way. He has not left us abandoned. He has not left us abandoned in trying to figure this out on our own. He has said, families, become what you are. Live that why with intentionality, and we can really transform the world. We have seen absolutely amazing things in this work, and it gives us so much hope for the future of the church when we see all of these beautiful young families boldly embracing God's plan.
Yeah. So families are the hope of the church. And as we are renewed and strengthened as families in our small little ways, that's how we transform the world. And this is a joy for us to be a part of this, and to also invite you into hopefully understanding more deeply your unique why for your family and live more intentionally. So thank you.